Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. In today's video, I will be reviewing X-Men Origins Wolverine. So, this is the fourth X-Men movie of the series, and to be honest, this is the worst out of the four that I have seen so far. But this doesn't mean it was a bad movie. Not at all. I actually enjoyed this movie. But if you want a good story, and something that you will remember, this is not the movie. This movie is just purely for entertainment. It's a very basic and straightforward story, and you don't even need to watch the past X-Men movies to know what's going on in this one. This movie is just a good movie to put on if you're bored and want some entertainment. Otherwise, the movie is just meh. I wanted to point out the worst aspect of this movie, and a lot of people have touched on this over the years. And it's the fact that the CGI is just not good in this movie. Now, I have to admit there are some parts of the movie where the CGI is pretty good. But the bad CGI is just overwhelmingly bad. The worst CGI I have seen in this movie was Wolverine's claws. The CGI on those claws are laughable. I actually laughed out loud, seeing how bad these things looked. When I was a kid, this was like one of my favorite movies, and when I look back at it now, it's like, what did I think about these claws? Because I don't remember them being this bad. The most notable time where the claws just look bad is in the scene where Wolverine is in the bathroom of the old people's home, and he's looking at them in the mirror. These claws are so obviously fake that it actually ruins the scene and takes you out of it completely. If you actually look close enough at his hands, the claws don't even come out of his knuckles evenly, and they actually move. The lighting is also off on them, so they look like they are superimposed onto his hands. I have a feeling that they did not use prosthetics for these claws, and they just put the claws in post. I can't believe that the original 3 X-Men movies made his claws look very realistic. Yet in this movie that was released in 2009, by the way, so they don't even have an excuse for that. I just can't believe how unrealistic these claws look. Enough with the claws though. What I wanted to talk about as well was the fact that the CGI was pretty good in other scenes. I don't know what was up with this movie, but the CGI was either really good or really bad. Some of it may be because they were on crunch and they just needed to get the movie out, so some of those scenes weren't really as important to the production team. I'm not sure. In the final fight scene, the CGI was pretty cool and well done, if you forget about Deadpool, but I'll touch on that later. The CGI for him was really well done, and some of the powers he used were pretty good as well. One of the little details that I really liked was the fact that you can see Deadpool's skeleton when he teleports. They even added a little detail where his skeleton is adamantium, because it was confirmed earlier on in the movie that he had adamantium in his bones. The CGI was also really well done when Wolverine was fighting Gambit. It was pretty cool how when Gambit threw his deck of cards, you could actually see them glow, which was really cool. I also liked the little effect when Gambit thrusted his cane into the ground. The best way I can describe it is how the cane in Moon Knight was used, and it also looked like the Power Stone in a way as well. I also really like the little detail where you can see John Rath's spinal cord after Sabretooth grabs him as he's teleporting. Another bit of CGI that I liked was when Emma Frost turned her skin into diamonds. You can still see all of her facial features, and you can even clearly tell that they were diamonds, and it was just a cool little detail. I just found it disappointing how in some parts of the movie the CGI was great, and then in others it wasn't good at all. It was very inconsistent throughout the whole movie, and sometimes it would be too distracting, and it would even take you out of the movie because it was so bad. Now, let's get to the part of the movie that annoyed me the most, and that was Deadpool. What did the writers think they were doing with Deadpool in this movie? Because it made absolutely no sense and it was kind of a slap in the face to Marvel fans. Sure, you can say that in the beginning of the movie, that we got a pretty good version of Deadpool, which I agree with. Obviously not as good as the Deadpool we have now, but still pretty good. I obviously like the fact that it was Ryan Reynolds then, and it's Ryan Reynolds now, so at least that's consistent in a way. All of that good stuff really doesn't matter though in the end, because of what they did to him. I didn't know why the writers thought this was a good idea. One of the worst things that they could have done was shut his mouth. Like, why would you literally take away the best part of Deadpool? That just totally undermines the whole character, because he has a really good sense of humor, and that would have added even more entertainment to this movie, to be honest. It was just weird to me how they changed Deadpool so dramatically. Like, they used him as a test subject to implant every single power of every single mutant that they captured. That has nothing to do with Deadpool. There's something about me that thinks that they just had Deadpool in it to say, hey look guys, we have Deadpool, a funny and witty character, just to attract people to the movie. I'm glad that they got rid of this abomination of a character, and that we have the Deadpool that we have today, because that was awful. Also, what's the idea of controlling him with a keyboard? The way it's insinuated is that every single movement that he makes is controlled by a computer. Wouldn't that make it way harder to control Deadpool? Like, couldn't they have just hypnotized him to kill everything, instead of using a computer to control him? It just didn't make sense to me. I'm done babbling about Deadpool, but there are a few other characters that I'd like to talk about. Let's start off with the good. I really like Gambit. He was really cool. I mentioned earlier that the CGI for his character was really well done, but I also just liked him as a character. Unfortunately, we didn't get much out of his character, but we did get enough for me to at least get interested in him. I myself don't know that much about Gambit in Marvel Comics, but I do know he is a thing. I wish we got more out of him, and I wish we got to see more of his abilities, and hopefully one day we get to see the character return. I have heard rumors that Channing Tatum wants to make a Gambit movie, with him starring as Gambit, and I'm all for that, so hopefully that goes through at some point. I mentioned a few things, but now is the part where I'm a little confused. So it says in the credits that Liev Schreiber is Sabretooth, and this is why it confuses me. We already got a rendition of Sabretooth in the first X-Men movie, so why do we have him again? If they didn't have Sabretooth in the first X-Men movie, then this would have worked really well. I really liked how Schreiber played Sabretooth, and I think he was the perfect actor for him. He was very antagonistic and had a good, fearful presence on screen, especially in the earlier parts of the movie. It even comes back to one of my criticisms of the first X-Men movie, and that was the fact that I didn't like how he looked in the first X-Men movie, and I said that he should look more human, because if Wolverine is based off of an animal, and he doesn't look like a Wolverine, then why should Sabretooth look more like a Sabretooth than human? I really like this rendition better because it's more realistic. I don't like the fact in this movie that they confirm that they're brothers, which was never ever mentioned before, and wouldn't have Sabretooth said something in the first X-Men movie, like "we meet again, brother," or something? I know the newer X-Men movies are notorious for not having proper continuity from the first X-Men movies, and I feel like this movie is the first time that we really start to see inconsistencies. There's another inconsistency, but it's not really a big deal. I just wanted to point it out. What I wanted to point out was the fact that they had two different actors for Cyclops, which was really weird. Nothing against the actor who played Cyclops in this movie. I think he actually looked pretty good as Cyclops in all honesty. I just wish that they had the same actor, because you would clue in right away as to who it is. Sure, you can clue in that it was Cyclops because he had red sunglasses, but it's like weird because this movie only takes place, like I'm guessing, 15 years before the first X-Men movie, so he wouldn't really look all that different. It's a minor detail, but it just makes it harder for the average viewer to come in and watch the movie if they change actors for established characters. I'm going to take a break from complaining for now, and I will touch on a few things, but I don't want this video to be too negative. I really like the beginning of this movie. How they showed a series of events that happened before the movie begins, and it's pretty cool. I like the fact that they've established that Wolverine was in all the world wars with his brother. I like the fact that they've explained what happened before Wolverine got his adamantium. It was alluded to in X-Men 2, where Stryker tells Wolverine about the time before he lost his memory, and then there was only one line, and that was it. And I'm glad that they acknowledged that in the first part of this movie. I also like the fact that we got a lot more mutants in this movie than I thought they would have had. It's pretty cool that they have other mutants in this movie, just to keep us reminding that, yes, this is the same universe as the X-Men movies. I also really like that we get a cameo from Sir Patrick Stewart, and the de-aging was pretty well done. I also really like the fact that in this movie, we get to see how powerful Wolverine really is. For God's sake, in the first hour of the movie, he gets the barn that he's in blown up, he takes down a helicopter, and suffers horrible pain, and he's still going. I just love the fact that they made Wolverine absolutely monstrous, and I wish we got a lot more of that. I know the movie Logan exists, but we haven't gotten there yet. On the subject of the barn blowing up, let me talk about the set of events before the barn blew up. I know this is going back to the negative, but it needs to be said. So, Wolverine has the procedure done on him, and now his skeleton is made of pure adamantium. He learns that they want to wipe his memory, so he gets angry and runs off. Stryker's right-hand man is told to go after Wolverine and kill him. And this is where my first problem arises. So earlier in the movie, Wolverine goes to beat up Sabretooth, because Sabretooth killed his girlfriend and Sabretooth beats Wolverine, and Wolverine is sent to the hospital. Stryker tells Wolverine that he should do a procedure, so that he can beat Sabretooth and get his revenge. Stryker says to Wolverine that you will become indestructible to anything. I say that very specifically for a reason. So as I said earlier, that Stryker wanted to send his right-hand man to go find and kill Wolverine. But the problem with that is, weren't you the same guy saying that he's now indestructible? And that he's made of an indestructible metal? How would your right-hand man be able to kill Wolverine? The only way I can think that this would work is to prolong Wolverine from getting back to the military base and killing everyone. But that is not Wolverine's main mission. It's to go after Sabretooth. I understand that in order to have all the cool action and stuff, that this needs to happen. But at the same time, it's like they could have avoided this plot hole. The way they could have avoided it is that they could not know that adamantium is indestructible, and maybe learn later on that it is. What could have happened was, instead of Stryker saying, you will become indestructible, it could have been that you would be almost indestructible, insinuating that there is a way to destroy adamantium. Because at this point, it would be insinuated that nobody knows that adamantium is actually indestructible. So it would make more sense to have Stryker's right-hand man go and try and kill Wolverine. Here's another little nitpick. In the first part of the movie, when Sabretooth goes to kill Kayla, Wolverine's girlfriend, it could have been done differently. What I mean by differently is that the same events happened, but some scenes could have been taken out. So Wolverine senses something, and we are cut to Sabretooth walking up to her car about to kill her. This scene could have been taken out. Do you know why I say that? Because it would have added more tension to the scene. We are shown all of the key ingredients to know what's going on, but they're basically treating us like idiots and showing us that Sabretooth is about to kill her. When in reality, we already knew that, just by looking at the screen and seeing the subtle hints. So here's how I feel the scene should have been put together. Wolverine senses something, and then we see scratch marks on trees, and a dead animal, and then he runs to the car, and sees scratch marks on the car, and then sees her in the distance. That would have been a lot more tense than what they showed us. It was all the same events, but in the middle of all that, they show Sabretooth going after her, so it ruined the tension. The other part that bothered me about it was the fact that when Wolverine found her, she was covered in blood. That's not the problem here. The problem is Wolverine immediately assumes she's dead. He didn't look for any puncture wounds or any of that. He just assumed she's dead. If he looked around, he would have seen that there were no marks on her, and would have realized that this was a setup, and that would have derailed the entire movie. But again, it could have been done differently. I know I said a lot of things about this movie that made it seem like that I hated this movie, but in between all the action scenes, and to be honest, the simplistic story, this movie is not great by any means, but it's still really entertaining. I love the fact that we are kind of introduced to Deadpool. The fact that we see other mutants. I also just like the fact that it was a Wolverine movie, and we get to see the best of Wolverine in this. This is the best we've seen any of him in any of the movies so far. We get to see what he is actually capable of doing, especially with an indestructible skeleton. With his regenerative powers, he's unstoppable. Yes, there are a lot of plot holes in this movie, but at least it was damn entertaining. Thank you all for watching, and see you in the next review.